This podcast is co-created and co-produced by Food Allergy Institute and the 12 Company. Listeners should know that the podcast host, Lesley-Anne Stone, is not a physician nor a licensed medical professional, and the purpose of this podcast is strictly limited to storytelling. Any content shared within the podcast is not intended to be medical advice and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment purposes. All listeners are urged to consult their healthcare providers. The creators, hosts, and guests of this podcast are not liable for any decisions or actions taken by any persons who claim to rely upon the content of this podcast.
The number one reason you send your child to preschool is the socialization piece. Learning how to interact with other children, learning how to negotiate. And as most people know who've had three-year-olds are pretty darn good at negotiation.
Oh, yes.
Right. And learning what those parameters are.
Hi, I'm Lesley-Anne Stone, and this is Resilience and Hope, a Food Allergy Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so happy about our episode today. I have a very special guest. Her name is Claudine Douglas, and she is the preschool director of Temple Beth Hillel's Early Childhood Education Center. It is the preschool where my son Sam went to preschool, also my son Casey, but Claudine was instrumental to us during Sam's food allergy journey. When we started with the Temple Beth Hillel's Preschool Early Childhood Education Center, Sam was relatively newly diagnosed to food allergies. And towards the end of our time in preschool, during pre-K, Sam joined the tolerance induction program at the Food Allergy Institute, and we switched gears through the program. And with Claudine, she helped us come up with strategies and techniques to get Sam to eat what he had to eat, as well as look at some of his behavior issues that were coming up because of him having to eat what he had to eat. It's really hard to manage a toddler, and Claudine is an expert in everything toddler. So here she is, my friend, Claudine Douglas. Thank you, Claudine, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you about this today.
I am so thrilled. Claudine, let's start. Just tell everyone your backstory. What is your background and how did you get to become the head of this preschool?
My backstory, well, it's long, I guess, so I'll try to keep it short. I have been an educator for 30 years. My background initially was elementary education, where I did a lot of administrative work because I worked in a small school district. So that was fantastic. And then I had my own kiddos and wanted a place to call my community and found Temple Beth Hillel initially as a parent. And I thought, okay, I'm ready to jump back in. I was doing consulting work and started teaching enrichment here, started thinking that I was going to go to other schools. But I was so busy here, the director asked me to run the Parent and Me program, which I did. And then she got sick and I filled in as the interim director because I had that administrative tier to my credentialing. And my role just kind of expanded from there. And when she retired, I had a lot of encouragement to apply for this position to be the early childhood director, and now have been doing that. I think I'm in my 14th year of doing this.
Wow.
So yeah, but I've been a part of a lot of aspects of early childhood and elementary education, including helping other schools better their programs. And I love all of it. I love being a part of the different aspects of education, but early childhood is really special. And getting to work with families is really a huge part of what I'm drawn to in this job.
So I came to your preschool. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't necessarily looking for a religious preschool. It was a place that I felt was very inclusive and very supportive of Sam and his food allergies. And you were very dedicated and committed to making it as safe as possible for Sam and for all children. I would love to talk a little more deeper, just get right into it with some of the protocols that we've set up for Sam. I do want to add that this preschool also is known as, in the community, the food allergy community, as a safe haven for food allergy kids and for families. Additionally, and just by pure coincidence, you've had other kiddos in the program who have gone through the tolerance induction program at the Food Allergy Institute since Sam. It wasn't just because of Sam. It just so happened. Let's share some of the protocols that you came up with and developed for Sam when we entered the preschool.
Yeah. And I think that your community is really strong. So you talk to one another. And so that's how
we talk.
Yes, I'm very aware. And I think that's how, we end up with other families in a similar situation. And we learn a lot with each of the different children that we've had from the program, but there are systems in place. There are certain systems in place just by the state alone. There are guidelines that we have to follow. And so for children who have significant allergies or a significant medical situation, we have to follow a certain plan, but we just go above and beyond. And I think you in particular were very instrumental, as another family was early on, in really being open about this and allowing us to post pictures of children with allergies. We post them in every classroom so that every teacher knows, because particularly in an early childhood setting, children can't necessarily advocate for themselves yet. And so all of our staff need to know what these children look like, right? And so having that up in the classroom and easy to reference is a huge part of it. Another big part of it is the routines around keeping the classrooms clean and safe. I'm kind of a stickler for clean. And so we have systems in place where teachers are cleaning up after children have eaten. And that's anything from wiping things down, spraying things down, vacuuming things up, sweeping them, whatever it might look like. It's really hard in an early childhood center. So having different layers of that is really important. And then we work so closely with our maintenance team. We have an amazing maintenance team who does deep cleaning at least one day a week in the middle of the week, which involves pulling out the furniture, getting behind things, all of that good stuff. And then they have systems for tracking when they're cleaning the classrooms, when they're cleaning the bathrooms, systems for the equipment. So there are a lot of additional steps around cleaning up that are really important in protocols that we have. And the other piece of that is really keeping teachers informed, keeping the staff informed. So checking in, we do that at the start of the school year, and then we do it periodically throughout the school year, and having that open door communication. And that's true for anything that we're navigating in a preschool setting, but really true when you have a life-threatening allergy.
I remember we sat down when Sam entered the preschool before first day, and we walked through the school day. And I remember you said, let's get Sam a bright colored placemat. So I bought him like a green placemat, and it was bright green. And we told Sam, you are only allowed to eat whatever is on your placemat. It gave the signal that anything was on the placemat was for Santa. Other kids couldn't touch the placemat. And that was something that was really helpful to him too, just as a 2-year-old, just being told, okay, whatever is in my space. It was helpful.
A lot of those placemats have evolved since Sam was here. I mean, there are actual placemats now that are really we have a kiddo that has allergies, and the placemat really looks like a very special placemat. And then so also sitting proximity to other children, I think that's really critical. So when a child has a life-threatening allergy, they sit a little bit away from the group, but close enough to still participate in the conversation, because a lot of language-rich opportunities occur during snack times, during lunch times. Those are really important times of the day. We also wipe hands, a lot of hand wiping.
Before you go in the classroom.
Before you go in the classroom. Yep.
And this was before COVID. This was before COVID. I remember. Yeah. Everyone wipes their hands down.
A little easier for families to get into that mode during COVID for sure. Because we had sinks outside of every classroom. So a little different than when you were here. We now have sinks outside of every classroom. So
it's awesome.
But we also have kids wipe their hands before going into early care. Our early care is a group setting. And so they have to wipe their hands or wash their hands when they come in. Our teachers are amazing, the little lineup that happens. So it's either a hand wipe or soap and water hand wash. Those are protocols that are in place. We can never claim to be 100% free of anything, because we are a temple, because we are a synagogue. We have a lot of other constituencies and people renting our facility for different things. And so having these protocols are really, really important.
I do. I remember it was like a mugshot in every classroom and it was a picture of Sam and it said, do not feed school food to this child. And you list all of his allergies. And then you would put it when you walk into the main office of the preschool. It was as soon as you walked in, it was just like his mugshot was everywhere. And we had a little swing bag that had his EpiPen and his Benadryl, and the teacher carried it on her. So if they went to the playground, it was on her. And then you also had a set of an EpiPen and a Benadryl in the main office at the reception desk. You guys were covered at all ports. The first day dropping off Sam, being in the parking lot, I didn't want to go. It was the first time I really left him outside the house. It was the first time I left him outside the house. And it was really scary, but you guys really handled it. I think I only sat there for 30 minutes. But you guys were awesome about creating a space where it was okay for me to be afraid. So thank you for that. And I do remember early on, every school year before school started, we would have a sit down with the teacher, a meet and greet with the teacher and her assistant. And we would have the orange and I would have my tester EpiPen, and we would all go around injecting it and talking about it and making sure the teacher knew about all Sam's different allergies and felt comfortable having Sam in the classroom. And the truth is, we talked about this. No teacher was really ever 100% comfortable. And you said that's a good thing.
You want them to have a little bit of fear around something new because that keeps them on their toes, right? So I think that's really, really important. And it shouldn't be so, oh, I got this, that you're not being extra careful, right? There's a little bit around kind of some of that fear to help make it more on the forefront of your thinking at all times. And I will tell you, our staff gets really good at it. My leadership might be around the protocols that we put in place, but they are really walking that every day. And they're so good about it. You talk about that little sling. That's so important. That little bag. They just do it. They pass it off to the next teacher. It's like, I'm going on my 10-minute break here. You now have the bag. It's really second nature, and reviewing those protocols are really important. So each year is a new chance at that, so that by the time in our program, most kids have go through our program for about 3 years. It just depends, but the average is about 2 or 3 years. And so by then, a lot of that staff have had that child. And so they're reviewing it all the time. And then we review it as a whole staff. And the meeting that we had with you might look a little different than a child with different allergies, and different protocols, so sometimes it involves looking at all the ingredients in the Play-Doh that we have, or the phloem that we use, or, there's a lot of sensory rich activities in preschool, and they all have ingredients in them.
I do want to talk to you, switching gears a little bit, about once we entered the Food Allergy Institute and we started doing treatment for Sam. Sam had to eat a certain amount of nuts at certain times of the day, and some of it would be before school would start. And sometimes it was just not pleasant at home, having Sam having to eat breakfast with these nuts, very specific dosages before we had to get out the door. And there would be meltdowns and whatnot. And I remember coming to you and asking your advice, how we can better manage our home life. What are some rewards and strategies in place? It was very important to me that any reward shouldn't be food-based, since this was a food allergy program. We just wanted to talk a bit about that. I remember one situation in particular. Sam was melting down before school and I came to talk to you about it. And you said, what is a reward not food-based? Something so simple, because I started thinking about rewards as being major rewards, and you can't just keep having these major rewards. You can't keep that up. I can't keep that up. And at the time, the Lego Batman movie was out, and there were billboards all over the San Fernando Valley where I live for Lego Batman. And you said, why don't you say to him, hey, if you eat the food that you have to eat before we leave for preschool, on the way to preschool, we'll pass that billboard. And that was huge for him. And we lived off of that for a while. Like, can we drive past the Lego Batman billboard? So I would love to know your opinion more about rewards and different types of rewards that you can offer a child. And speaking now to food allergy parents, specifically in the tolerance induction program, because I'm sure there are a lot of mothers out there right now struggling to get their kiddos out the door, but they have to eat their treatment food. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think that's probably, at least from what I hear, the hardest part of what you're navigating and hard for these children to understand. So in terms of those rewards, anything that has natural consequence is always going to be the most impactful. Like you said, you can't tolerate, like we're going to have a new toy at the end of every moment like this. So equating it to the time and equating it to we've got to get through it, and then that natural consequence. If you're finishing your food, then we're going to have time to drive by this billboard before we go to school or after the end of the day. And as much as you can embed that in there, the trick is figuring out what's that thing that they love. Maybe it's a special song. Maybe it's having control over the radio in the car. Maybe it's some special something at the end of the day. Even it depends on the age of the child, how much of a delayed gratification they can tolerate. But natural consequence is always the best thing. So if you can have and usually it's anything that's time with you, the adults in their lives. And so if it's maybe having a little extra time on the playground before the day starts because we were able to get through all of this. And this is true. I mean, this is advice we give for any kiddo going through any kind of new challenge, because as you know, preschoolers and all children at all ages give us new challenges every day and new things that we're working through.
But I remember you once saying to me too, that something as simple as let's go on a walk and count the lizards. In Southern California, there are lizards everywhere. I know other parts of the country, you may not be able to go outside and count lizards, but it's just offering more time with your child, that the child just wants your attention.
It also takes away that thought of this is such a negative thing that we're experiencing together, right? Again, I'm not doing the eating, but even taking a break midway through, right? I noticed that we just need to go for a little walk and a talk. As much as you can make those moments more enjoyable, it's easier to move through them. You can't take away the discomfort completely, and you certainly can't take away the pushback, but you can try to reframe the thinking around it.
That reminds me of a year that we were with you, and it was Purim. For those who don't know Purim, it is a Jewish holiday. It's a festival. Children dress up in costume. And there was a Purim parade at school. And it was at the top of the morning. And Sam had to eat his nuts. And he was giving me such a hard time about the nuts. And it was a tantrum, and it became bad. But I knew he couldn't miss the parade. I didn't want to do that to him. We bought a costume, and he was some fireman, and he was so proud of the costume, and what do I do? And I took him to the parade, and parents are there taking pictures. And after the parade, instead of continuing on with the class for the rest of the day, I said, you're getting back in the car and we're going home, and we're going to finish breakfast. Yeah. And it was a consequence to teach him that we can take a break. And we're gonna go back home and do our work. We're gonna go back home and do this treatment. And you told me that was also a moment to remove him from the situation, to get him to regulate with the tantrum, and then go back and finish and do what we had to do. And it also taught him that there is a consequence. That no, you have to do this. You have to do this.
I mean, two big important lessons there. One, you're handling the big stuff, right? Kids. It creates more anxiety when we let them negotiate or we let them make those bigger choices. You've got the big stuff. You know this needs to happen for his health. And it's saying that I've got the big stuff. You don't have to worry about that. And it's actually a non-negotiable. And two, you've allowed him to regulate his brain. He's completely flipped his lid right in that moment, and you cannot get him past it. So walking a talk, going on with something daily. If you can move past it, you can always come back to it. Again, it's sort of age specific. 3-year-olds start to be able to do that and older. When they're 2, it's a little harder. It depends on the child, whether they can sort of retain that information afterward. But with somebody that was Sammy's age, that was such a beautiful gift you gave him. You told him, I've got the big stuff. We're still going to do this, even though we did something else, and we can come back to it. So lots of important messages happen there. So bravo.
You are so empathetic to food allergy families. Talk about that. How if you worked in education, elementary, early childhood, you saw that evolution of how now it is so prevalent in the classroom. Would just like to know your observations through the years with food allergies and food allergy parents.
Yeah. So as I said, I've been doing this for a long time. And I think the first kiddo that I had with really significant allergies was when I was teaching kindergarten. So probably back in the late 90s. And I saw what that little kiddo went through, and she could not go to preschool because they didn't feel safe. And, that was hard. As a kindergarten teacher, I didn't necessarily know what kind of preschool kiddos went to for the most part. But I certainly could tell if they hadn't had a preschool experience. And all of those building blocks around socialization and understanding, this little kiddo had to go through that at the same time as having to learn to navigate the school setting. And I remember her mom, you were just talking, it brought back a memory. You were just talking about how that first day when you drop off, I remember her mom literally hiding in the bushes. People would come and tell me she's hiding in the bushes, which does happen still sometimes in preschool. That really taught me about how important that relationship is. And so working with preschools preschool age children is really about working with the whole family. And that empathy piece is very, very important. Also, just kind of having some flexible thinking because it's all new. It was the feelings you had for Sammy. A lot of preschool families go through that feeling of, I'm leaving my baby for the first time. But for allergy families, it truly is a life-threatening situation, and how terrifying that must be. Occasionally we will get the parent who will be frustrated at some of the food restrictions we have. Like if we have a child with significant allergies, for example, to sesame, right? There's no hummus in that classroom for lunch, right? You can't bring it. I can't prevent it from the whole school, but we certainly can prevent it in a classroom. And there are some families who have the gift of not having to worry about that. And so they may get a little bit frustrated. And, I always say to families, like, how fortunate you are. You don't have that extra, you have things that you have to worry about, but you don't have this extra burden that a lot of these families have, and that fear, and how scary that must be. And how fortunate for you that you don't have that. Having the empathy for families, and also that education piece that's sometimes involved as well. But that's just kind of what it means to be working in early childhood, whether you are in an administrative role or in a teaching role, you really are working with the whole family. And this is not a job of pay, it's a job of passion. And you kind of have to love that part.
I would like to know from you, what is your advice to people out there who have babies who are on the brink of starting to look for a preschool? What is your advice to them? What should they look for? Even non-food allergy families, what should folks look for? What's your advice to people looking for preschools?
Yeah. I think the first thing that families tend to look at is, do they want a secular experience? Do they want a faith-based experience? What kind of program do they want? Do they want a Montessori program? Do they want a developmental play-based program? I think those are the things that families initially start to look for. And when you're going on a tour, first of all, I think it's fabulous if you can bring your kiddo with you on the tour, so you get to see your child in the environment, and the school and the program gets to see your child and start to understand your child right from the beginning. That's a really good and important thing. You want to ask questions around, I get the typical questions around ratios, and that's really important. But beyond just the ratio, what is the maximum amount of children in a classroom? Because you can have a ratio, the legal ratio is 1 to 12 in a preschool age. But ours is typically about 1 to 6, 1 to 7. And you can have a ratio that small, but if you have 18 kids in a classroom, and that ratio, it's still a lot of kiddos in a classroom. So you want to have that classroom size smaller as much as possible because it can help contain it. And then what kind of support do the teachers get? Are the teachers in the classroom kind of solo all the time? Are there extra roving teachers that can help them? Are there, what does the administrative team look like? What does professional development look like? Boy, since COVID, early childhood has changed dramatically, as has education in general. And training and keeping up with that training is so, so important. And it also keeps teachers motivated. So I think these are things to ask that parents sometimes don't think about when they're looking in a preschool setting. You know, having those meetings that we had also takes that follow-up, checking in with those teachers. You know, how is that going? And for children who have some exceptionalities or who have a lot of allergies, working through that with the teacher is really important.
It's very important. So why should a child go to preschool? Because you don't have to go to preschool, but why do you believe children should go to preschool?
The number one reason you send your child to preschool is the socialization piece. Learning how to interact with other children, learning how to negotiate. And as most people know who've had 3-year-olds are pretty darn good at negotiation.
Oh, yes.
Right. And learning what those parameters are. Also understanding that other adults can take care of you and how to advocate for yourself. That's where all of those beginning executive functioning skills begin. If I make this choice, what will the result be? How will I move through that? Learning to regulate. That's a huge thing. Think about when kids go to elementary school. If you have kids in elementary school, they have to be pretty self-sufficient and they have to learn to advocate for themselves. They have to learn to sit and attend and take in all of this different information and different adults in the space. So, I mean, we have a scope and a sequence, so to speak, of the goals that we want for children in terms of those early academic or pre-academic skills. But man, that socialization piece is the number one piece. You know, can they function? Can they advocate for themselves? Can they negotiate a challenge? Can they problem solve?
Can they sit on the rug? Can they sit on the rug?
Can they sit and attend? Yeah, sitting and attending. Yeah. People kind of sometimes underestimate the importance of that. And when people are looking for preschool, how do they scaffold that learning? What does it look like at age 2? How does that change for age 3? And so forth and so on. Because those are the skills that you can't tutor. Those are the skills you can't give them a little extra for, right? You can work on letter awareness and literacy and number concepts, but you cannot get back that socialization piece. And when I say things changed during COVID, that's a big part of that. That socialization piece was greatly impacted for children.
You are totally right that you can't tutor the socialization. You cannot tutor that. That is so interesting. I am aware now at your preschool that there are no butters whatsoever.
Yeah.
That is something that is completely not permitted at the preschool. I imagine that you get some pushback from that for non-food allergy parents.
Yeah, boy, that is still a hot topic. This no butter. So no butters. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but butters meaning any kind of anything that looks or resembles a peanut butter or an almond butter or any kind of butter. The thing is that the teachers can't tell unless they're sticking their finger in it or their nose in it. They don't know what kind of butter it is. So we just said, no, we cannot have those in the classroom setting. And yes, there are feelings around it. Predominantly from folks who don't have to navigate this. And there aren't a lot of them. Most people, by and far, are understanding. But we do see a lot of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches now. And I do encourage, I will hear from parents, they only eat peanut butter. What am I going to do? You're going to serve peanut butter at breakfast and at snack time and at all these other moments where they're at home with you that you can offer the peanut butter and get creative with it. But yeah, that is an area where people will have feelings. But again, for the most part, once you talk to them and help them understand how lucky they are that they don't have to navigate that, they get it.
So what's your final message to food allergy parents of preschool age children?
Hang in there. I think just hang in there. build the trust. I know it's hard to build trust, but find the place that you can trust. It's kind of the same advice I give for finding a pediatrician. You're going to have to live there. You're going to have to spend time there. So find the place that you can build trust with and that you can partner with, because it's going to be an exhausting 2 or 3 years if you're worrying all the time and feeling like you have to second guess everything. And that's not easy to say, and that's not easy to do. But I think that's the most important piece.
So Claudine, plug the school. Let's hear it. Tell us about Temple Beth Hillel. How can we get in touch with the early childhood education if we are in the San Fernando Valley?
If you are interested in doing a tour or taking a look around, go to templebethhillel.org and it'll have a little drop-down education, and you can find us. You can call us. You can call our office. We'll set up a tour. I'll show you around. I'll tell you all about the school.
Claudine, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your words of wisdom. And thank you for making the preschool experience for both my kids so magical and so wonderful. And you really set them up for success in elementary school, starting in kindergarten. I could see right away how all those years in preschool paid off that very first day of kindergarten. And your preschool is truly a very warm and magical place. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing them with us.
Thank you. And thank you to the listener. Thank you for tuning in and joining us at Resilience and Hope. We have social media. We have an email address. Please write to us. We would love to hear from you. If there's a topic that you're interested in hearing more about, if you have any questions, write us. resilienceandhopepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on Instagram at Resilience and Hope Podcast. And please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. 5 stars. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. I'm Lesley-Anne Stone. Thanks for tuning in. Resilience and Hope Podcast, made possible thanks to the support of Food Allergy Institute.